So here we are again with MindWorks. We're on chapter 30, and the title is What is Failure? Two questions. What is feedback? And it begins by saying, a person without a problem is like a warrior with a broken sword. And then it says, sit back, relax, take a deep breath, allow yourself to daydream. Think of some mistakes you made. Now look at your whole life up to this point and try to imagine what it would have been like if you hadn't made those mistakes. Think of the positive things that would not have happened if you hadn't made those mistakes. Take a few minutes to recognize the opportunities these mistakes provided and all you learned and gained because of some of them. Failure includes mistakes. Failure means not achieving the outcome you intended because of some miscalculation on your part, because something you couldn't foresee or control made it backfire, because the timing was off, or because any number of reasonable or unreasonable causes that make things go wrong. You didn't get what you wanted, or you got what you wanted. The job, the marriage, the long-awaited trip, but it turned out not to be what you'd expected. Things happen. People are not trees. They can move despite having roots. And what was or used to be will change as the person grows and develops. Life happens, failures happen. People make mistakes. They say the wrong thing, fall in love with the wrong person, fight battles they later wish they'd never heard of. But each mistake is a possibility. Jeanette marries Bob and moves to Australia. 5 years later, she sees it was a mistake. Bob isn't the person for her. They can barely speak to each other without getting into an argument, but Jeanette has found a wonderful job there, which has led to a new career she loves. If she hadn't made her, quote, mistake, Bob, she might never have discovered her talents and satisfactions down under. Someone else makes a career choice that turns into a dead end. He's a specialized technician with a large corporation that seemed to specialize in nothing so much as downsizing, but he meets the person who becomes the love of his life. How often has this happened to you or people you know? Missing a train, walking into the wrong room, saying something you didn't mean to say. These are the trivial mistakes of everyday life that open up new opportunities. You take the wrong road and find undiscovered country, a beautiful setting for something you have in mind, a picnic, a wedding, a scene in a play you're writing. You go to one of those multiplex theaters and buy a ticket to the wrong movie, which turns out to be the best thing you've seen in years, and helpful too. Mistakes are like tiny time warps, a little hiatus in the usual routine, an interruption of the automatic cycle of A goes to B. A mistake is a new response, and it can provide a new outlook. It can give you a new approach, open up new possibilities, and show you a hidden territory you stumbled on by accident. Bill Gates, the fabulously wealthy founder of Microsoft, got his start by being fired. The discovery of penicillin came about by mistake. Even the discovery of America was an accident. Christopher Columbus set out intending to find a sea route to India, and by mistake ran into the New World. Also, by mistake, he discovered that that world was round. Did Columbus fail? Well, sure he did. If failure means not achieving your outcome, Columbus failed in big ways. Romeo and Juliet failed, and theirs was a failure that ended in death. Though ultimately their love for each other resulted in the coming together of their families, the Montagues and the Capulets, and the bringing of peace to Verona, the young lovers themselves were unable to turn their failure around. They were too young, too lacking in experience, not able to learn from the enmity and bitterness around them how to prevent their own demise. They themselves became the mistake. The deaths of Romeo and Juliet, both of them the result of mistakes, became the accident that permitted the two warring factions to come together, the deep wound that leads to eventual healing. Failure happens when you want something, to get, be, or do something, and don't achieve or attain it. Failure also happens when you think you should do or achieve or acquire something because someone else or convention or society, religious morality, wants or expects you to. Expectation leads to failure, especially if the expectations are unrealistic or have little to do with the individual involved. If a man feels he should support his wife and family, or a woman feels she should be a wonderful mother, failure is getting ripe to happen. Failure is a sense you haven't done the right thing or you haven't done enough. Failure is when you're not keeping up with the Joneses, or depending on what you see as the expectations of your family, class, upbringing, not getting ahead of the Joneses. In other words, failure happens when you don't have a smart outcome. It's not getting what you want if what you want isn't a reasonable or possible thing for you to get or accomplish at this point in your life. Failure leads to disappointment. That's natural. You want something, you don't get it, you're disappointed. Or you make a mistake, an error of judgment or timing. You say the wrong thing and offend someone without meaning to. You drift off into a daydream in the midst of a lecture and don't know the answer when you're asked about this part on your exam. Small mistakes like these, or large failures on the scale of a career, relationship, or major project, are devastating, frustrating, disappointing, annoying, all of that. But they can also provide a gateway into new fields, new learnings, new opportunities. Mistake or failure, something happens that's not what you intended, not what you wanted. It's not what I meant at all, J. Alfred Prufrock says in T.S. Eliot's poem. Okay, these things happen all the time. Now the question is, what's next? Failure is often part of a cycle. You try, you fail, you give up. The road you set out turns to be a dead end, turns into a dead end, and that's it, end of the story. You wish you'd never started, wish you never tried, but in any case, it's over now. Best thing to do is forget about it. Is that how you think? Forget about it? Lose all that information and experience? Throw out the feedback? Babies in bathwater. The feedback you can get from failure lets you start on a new path that can lead you to destinations you haven't yet dreamed of. Feedback is the information we gain from experience. More than, quote, gain, it's like a harvesting of experience, gathering up the fruits so we can begin again, either by planting the same crop, same type of seeds, but in new soil, or by doing something different this time. Feedback is new information, a new way of looking at things, profiting by what went wrong before to make sure it won't happen this time. Feedback lets you start again, gives you a new lease, lets you reassess your former goal or outcome. What did I do wrong? And why did this work? Lead naturally to, do I still want this outcome? Am I still the same person I was when I set out on this career, project, relationship? What has changed? What can I do about it? And most importantly, what have I learned? The ability to learn from your mistakes is one of the most valuable resources you can have. It lets you move on to the next step, prevents you from being caught in a rut, and lifts you out of boredom, mediocrity, even a sense of helplessness. What can I do about it? If you're asking that seriously, the answer is a lot. In fact, failure is a necessary part of growth. How can I know what I'm doing right unless I see what I do wrong? How can I improve my backhand, my cooking, my public speaking, unless I'm sensitive to my weaknesses or mistakes, and then do what I can to correct them? Failure is a dead end only when people are unable to learn from it. Paradoxically, it's often success, and particularly early success, that's limiting. Success can limit you because you stop learning. If you get everything you want at the beginning, you miss the opportunity to learn about things that can help you grow and develop. Without the experience of failure, you don't develop resilience or flexibility. If you're not tried and found wanting, how are you going to develop the resource of strength? Think of sports stars who are washed up at 30, child prodigies in science or the arts whose success prevents them from maturing at a normal rate, or beautiful women and men who were always stunning and relied on their beauty to get anything they wanted. What happens when these women and men grow older? What happens to their self-esteem, their self-image? Very often, they have a hard time living with the reality of aging and the loss of their youthful charms. These are the people who become obsessed with plastic surgery, whose standards become impossible to match. They have to be beautiful. Beauty is the only way they knew how to live. It's the way they interact with other people. It's how they're used to accomplishing whatever they're after. Not to be beautiful becomes a failure. Not to be young is a failure. Aging itself is a failure. Perhaps people who are used to success often find they don't have many resources when the attribute or talent that has brought them success fails. To view aging as failure, as unfortunately too many people in our society do, is to be unable to deal with the real world. It means you can't learn from experience. You're locked into a cycle that says failure is bad and you have yourself to blame. If you fail, it says you're no good. This is like the old stimulus response behavior we talked about in part 2. Here, failure leads to bad and bad leads to self-blame. When we turn failure into feedback, we interrupt this response and replace it with a new one. Now it becomes failure is information, and information leads to opportunity instead of driving us to a dead end. Failure can put us on a new road. I think this article misses a bunch of stuff. Can we talk for a minute?